Howdy, folks. For today's episode of Lost in the Woods, I thought we'd go get lost in the woods. The subject I wanted to talk about today, it's kind of complicated. It's a broad subject, and it's hard to decide how to get started. But a good place to start is the beginning. See, some of these trees are painted, and some loggers were supposed to come through here, and they decided not to. We got our snow. But I think when it comes to political ideologies, you might say there's two rows and two columns. We'll say, well, that doesn't work either. But there's definitely people I would describe as alphas. And those are the people that try to think for themselves and form their own opinions. Now, some alphas are right-leaning, some alphas are left-leaning. What makes them an alpha isn't what they believe, it's how they got there. And I think there are betas, and betas are the people that either just choose to not have an opinion for whatever reason, or they're the people that choose to align themselves with a left-leaning alpha or a right-leaning alpha. You might say they use social intelligence instead of their own. But I think alphas tend to be of above average intelligence. And I think left-leaning alphas fall victim to what is called the Kruger effect, which I looked up because I wanted to make sure I got it right. And I found some pure poetry online that describes the Dunning-Kruger effect as a cognitive bias of illusory superiority. And that's just, that rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? Cognitive bias of illusory superiority. Now, what does that mean? That means that if you're above average intelligence, you start thinking you're smarter than everybody. Therefore, you must be right. And I think this happens to a lot of leftists because they don't know about Gödel's Incompleteness Theorem. Godel, and maybe it's pronounced Godel or Godel. It's one of those German names with umlauts in it. He's a super smart dude. He's buddies with Albert Einstein. And he developed what is known as Gödel's Incompleteness Theorem. And it's a pretty complicated proof, but the gist of it, the basics of it, is that, oh hey, look at this. Yeah. Hey, a Coors Light bush. Nice. Just in time. The gist of Gödel's incompleteness theorem is that in any logical system that is made up of some axioms, rules, you will always be able to find a contradiction, and you'll always be able to find a truth that is not provable without looking outside the system. There's a fabulous book about it called Godel, Escher, Bach by Douglas Hofstadter. Well, what that really means is Godel proved that logic itself is not consistent. And I think that's where leftists get themselves in the most trouble, is because they hold logical consistency in such high regard. But if you know about Gödel's incompleteness theorem, you are freed from the bonds of logical consistency. Now, what does that do for you? That means you don't have to be logically consistent. That allows you to have some beliefs that you can make exceptions to those beliefs. If you're trapped with logical consistency, you will inevitably be trapped into holding some beliefs that, while they may be logically consistent, they just don't work in our inconsistent world. Why do you think our laws are so complicated? Because they're logically consistent? No. That's what makes them so, well, yeah, that is why they're so complicated, because they have to be. The law has to be logically consistent, and it just doesn't work. Example. It's a good idea to be accepting of people, right? Everybody wants to be accepted and loved. So you might make up a rule that says everybody should be accepted regardless of who they are. And that feels right. And that feels good. And if you're logically consistent, you'll say, well, you should accept people for who they are, so I accept everybody. But what about pedophiles? I don't think pedophiles deserve to be accepted, even though you should accept people for who they are. And you say, well, people should be accepted for who they are, so even though I know you're morbidly obese, I'll just tell you that you're beautiful. Beauty at any size, right? Because that's logically consistent with believing that everybody should be accepted for who they are. Now, if you're freed from the bonds of logical consistency, you'll be able to tell somebody, I'm concerned about your health. I think you should lose weight, even though I'm telling you you should be somebody different than you are now, maybe physically. If you're freed from the bonds of logical consistency, you can say, I like and tolerate all peoples, but not pedophiles. And another trap that logical consistency catches, I think, leftists are the people that, would agree that just because a baby isn't born yet doesn't mean it's not alive. I think that's a lot of people feel that way. But they say, well, there are some cases where abortion is justified. And then, in order to be logically consistent, I have to therefore say, I'm pro-choice. And I'm saying, if you know Gödel's Incompleteness Theorem, if you know that logic itself is inconsistent, if you are freed from the bonds of logical consistency, then you can say, I'm pro-life. I think that baby, even though it hasn't been born yet, is a life. But I also understand there are some circumstances that might warrant an abortion, maybe to save the life of the mother, especially if that baby is going to be born dead. Clearly, okay, there's a case where abortion might be justified, but that doesn't mean that you're pro-choice. You can still be pro-life and make some exceptions to your rules, because you don't have to be logically consistent. Uh-oh. We're getting out of these woods, but we just found some more woods. Boy, this snow sure is something. Big shout out to my 17 subscribers. You guys are top notch. I hope you're liking my videos. I hope you're liking Lost in the Woods. Although we know we don't have to be logically consistent, and that when we say we're lost in the woods, we might not necessarily be lost in the woods, because here's a trail. Although, boy, the snow did a number on this trail. I just got done watching a video about 5G and AI, and I think that's a good topic for Lost in the Woods, but not today. Well, this is something else, man. I'm gonna have to come through here with a chainsaw. This is my primo snowshoeing trail here. We're supposed to get another foot of snow.